Greetings folks, and peace of Christ be on all of us. Welcome back to this series. In the last video we saw what is this apocalyptic language, and we saw some examples for this apocalyptic language, and we also saw an example for the decreation language in Jeremiah. So in this video, let's see how this ties into the New Testament, especially the Olivet Discourse in Matthew 24. When the disciples asked Jesus about the end of the age and the destruction of the temple, Jesus answered in a specific way. Now immediately after the troubles of those days, the sun will be darkened, the moon will not reflect its light, the stars will fall from the sky, and the powers from the heavens will be disrupted. If we examine the passage, we can see that Jesus is quoting three Old Testament verses: Isaiah 13 verse 10, Isaiah 34 verse 4, and Joel 2 verse 10. In the Gospel it reads, "Now immediately after the troubles of those days the sun will be darkened." In the Prophet it reads, "The sun will be dark, the sun will go dark." In the Gospel, the moon won't reflect its light. In the Prophets we read, "And the moon won't shine, and the moon will go dark." In the Gospel we read, "The stars will fall from the sky," and in the Prophet we read, "All the stars in the heavens will fall down." We read, "And the powers from the heavens will be disrupted." In the Prophets we read, "For the stars of the heavens and the constellations won't shine their light. Even the heavens shake and the stars will stop shining." But what were they talking about? Isaiah 13 was talking about the destruction of Babylon. Isaiah 34 was talking about the destruction of Edom, and Joel 2 was talking about the destruction of Jerusalem. Notice they were not talking about the end of the time-space continuum, but they were talking about the destruction of the specific nation. So hence this passage in the Gospels is about the destruction of Jerusalem. Hence this is an oracle against Jerusalem. In the next verse we read, "Then the sign, that is the Son of Man, will appear in the sky, and all the tribes of the land will mourn as they see the Son of Man coming on the clouds of heaven." Again we can see Jesus quoting three specific Old Testament passages: Zechariah 12:11 and 12, Daniel 7:13, and Isaiah 19 verse 1. The language of the tribes mourning in the land is found in Zechariah 12 verse 11 and 12. Then the sign of the Son of Man that will appear in the sky, and the Son of Man coming down on the clouds of heaven, is found in Daniel 7:13 and Isaiah 19 verse 1. But what were they talking about? They were talking about the destruction of Jerusalem, the destruction of the fourth kingdom, and the destruction of Egypt. They were definitely not talking about the end of the time-space continuum. When the disciples asked Jesus about the destruction of Jerusalem, and Jesus applies the destruction language of Isaiah, Joel, Daniel, and Zechariah to Jerusalem, and he also continues by saying in verse 34, "I tell you all with certainty, this generation won't pass until all these things happen, and Jerusalem is left a smoking ruin in exactly that generation, which is 40 years. That is a fulfilled prophecy." Now many might scoff at this idea and say, "Oh well, this generation doesn't mean this generation, it means some future generation in some distant future." But what about these verses in Matthew 23 verse 35? Jesus says, "As a result, you will be held accountable for all the righteous blood shed on the earth." And he continues by saying, "I tell you all with certainty, all these things will happen to those living in this generation." What will do with Matthew 10 verse 23, where Jesus said, "You will not have gone through all the towns of Israel before the Son of Man comes." What about Matthew 16:28? "I tell you all with certainty, some people who are standing here will not experience death before they see the Son of Man coming down in his kingdom." Jesus could not have made it any more clear that his coming is right around the corner in the 1st century, in about 40 years, which is a generation. So the whole Olivet Discourse is about the destruction of Jerusalem in 70 AD. Thank you all for watching, and God bless you.